Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 1688. The topic is nutrition and the title is Quick Weight Loss Followed by Plateau. What now? Oh no. So if you have experienced quick weight loss followed by a plateau, what do you do? What do you do next? What are the next steps? So I want to read through a situation that a client is facing that was, kind of prompted this podcast. And then I'll read through the advice that I would give them, which can be the advice that I would give you. So they wrote, "Thank you so much." And this was after I delivered their most recent training programs. So they said, "Thank you so much. I'm sorry I've been crap about getting back to you. I started my new job, parentheses, 1 month now, yay. And I can't have my phone at work. Plus, the wedding is in 30 days. It's been stress." I'm sure it's been very stressful. It's a lot going on. They said, "I really appreciate all the encouragement you've been sending." Their husband and them, I work with both of them, have really been careful about keeping our calorie goals and have one sweets day a week, like parentheses Friday. She said, "Since we started 2.5 weeks ago, we've both lost nearly 10 pounds. Badass. Really awesome." So she continued, "Question for you. We've been weighing each day, and we've hit a little plateau where neither of us has lost or gained beyond 1 pound. Do you have any advice for continued weight loss? We tried restricting calories a little more, but that didn't seem to work, and neither did a huge hike added to our normal gym, LOL. We were both so encouraged by the loss, and I think we're both a little sad about not having lost anything for about 4 days now. But we're still maintaining positivity and recognize that this is a journey and not linear." Okay, so what we see here is they cleaned up and they started trying to be a little more adherent to the calorie goals that I'd given them before, and they were typically having a lot more sugars than we would typically want, and they were usually over their calorie count. So by reducing sugar intake, that brought their calorie count down. It brought a lot of simple, refined, like sugary type carbohydrates down, and that is why they lost in the last 2.5 weeks. They said they lost 10 pounds. That's awesome. You make a big adjustment like that, which is definitely going to be hard to do. Trying to go from having sweets whenever you want them, which might be, 4, 5, 6, 7 days a week, to only once a week. That's a huge change. It's a huge step. So good for you. Congratulations. And then being more adherent to the calorie goals means you're kind of paying attention to more what you're eating per meal. You have to, put that into some kind of tracker of some kind, or at least be aware of it, cognitively throughout the day. There's definitely more efforts going in there. So again, congratulations. Those are awesome. Those are huge, awesome efforts. Getting the calories more within the goals, limiting the sugars, huge, awesome efforts, big adjustments. Therefore, it led to big changes. You lost 10 pounds in 2.5 weeks. Awesome. Congratulations. Now, the downside is eventually that does plateau because the human body can only lose so much body fat at one time. And I'm going to come back to this. This is important to kind of differentiate between losing body weight and losing body fat. Those are not the same things. So I'm going to come back to that in a second. So typically, when we look for healthy weight loss, like a rate of weight loss, where it won't result in excessive loose skin, is not very exciting, but it's really only going to be about 1 to 2 pounds per week. If you were to lose weight at a rate of 1 to 2 pounds per week, your skin will be able to adjust along with that, so you won't be left with loose skin, and you'll get very minimal, if any, what's called a rebound when you get to your goal. Meaning that whatever you lose by the time you get to your goal, you're pretty much going to keep all of it. Contrasting to that is you can push harder, more intense, and make it more miserable. And you can get results at a faster rate. You can lose you can lose body weight faster than 1 to 2 pounds per week. Hell yes, you can. I've done it. I've lost 50 pounds in 10 weeks or less 3 times as a challenge. One time I lost 50 pounds in 8 weeks. So 2 months, I lost 50 pounds. Now, the downside is when you push for that intensity, you get what's called a rebound, meaning the weight that you lost isn't entirely body fat. Therefore, there's going to be some adjustment at the end. Typically, if somebody tries to lose weight at a faster rate than 1 to 2 pounds per week, they're doing it in a nutritional manner that is not sustainable. Meaning they're doing it through a way of eating that cannot be their normal way of eating. So they're not just taking their normal foods and reducing the calories a little bit. They're setting up weird, crazy rules like no carbohydrates, a keto diet. Or I'm only going to eat between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m., like the intermittent fasting. There's a lot of ways in which people will manipulate the way they eat to the degree that it's not really a sustainable for the rest of your life way of eating. So you eat that way, that special way, to get the weight lost, but then when you go back to your regular way of eating, you get a rebound. Some of the weight comes back on. This is why I'm not a big fan of those kind of special ways, is because it's just a temporary feel-good. It makes you feel good now, but then you're going to hate life and have all this negative emotional, it frustrates me at times because people want all the stuff that's quick. And when you tell them, even if you tell them, hey, you might lose 30 pounds in 30 days, but you're going to gain 10 of that right back. And if you do it where you take a bunch of shots, HCG shots, you do it with keto, you do it with intermittent fasting, you're not learning how to not get fat again. That's important to kind of understand here is you want to lose body fat, right? Of course. But you also want it to stay off. So when you're doing a diet to lose body fat, are you doing it in a way that you're learning to never get fat again? Or is it just a temporary way to get the fat off and then all of a sudden the fat's going to come right back? Right? What do we want? We want the fat to come off. We want to stay off. So it's important to lose it in a way that teaches you how to keep it off. This is why when people do extreme kind of diets, they almost never, ever work. When you watch like the Biggest Loser, things like that, I would say easily 50% of those people go right back to the way they were. The 50% that don't have to exercise 2 to 3 hours a day. They have, a lot of extreme eating disorders, a lot of body dysmorphia orders. It's not just this happy, hunky-dory life and everything is the way they want. Overwhelmingly, over 50% of the time, those Biggest Loser type shows end up screwing that person over, emotionally, physically. They're great for ratings. Everybody wants to see, I can lose, 50 pounds in 2 months. You can, but you're not going to keep it off. That's the thing. You want to be able to keep it off. So, what happens when you have a quick weight loss? The body can really only kind of rip off and strip off body fat at a healthy rate of 1 to 2 pounds per week. So, if you lost, say 4, 5, 6 pounds or more in the first week or the first 2 weeks, the majority of what you lost was actually water retention. That's going to sound a little sad. You did lose body fat. Stick with me here. But the majority of what you would lose would be water retention. What happens with our food, you can listen to podcast 926 if you want to learn more super duper in depth about this. You can go to our website, www.brutalirongym.com. We have a podcast player there, and then we have instructions on how to get to older podcasts. But podcast 926 is a nutrition podcast titled Controlling Water Retention. When we eat carbohydrates and any amount of sodium, really that's within any of the foods we eat, whether it's fats, proteins, or carbohydrates, and you consume water, you drink water, what happens is the carbohydrates get broken down into the form of glucose. That pairs with sodium and it pairs with water, and it creates a kind of a substance in your muscle tissue called glycogen. That is stored glucose in your muscles. Glucose is energy. Our body loves glucose because that's how we move and do things. That keeps us alive. So glucose is energy. Our body says, hey, if I have glucose coming in, if I have carbohydrates coming in, and I would like to be able to store that in the muscles. So when the muscles need them, they can have that energy. So it's kind of like the gas tank for your muscles. You have to have energy in the gas tank. If I want to drive my car, I have to have gasoline in the car, right, in the gas tank. So the body takes carbohydrates, sodium, and water, mixes that all up, and puts it into the muscles. Well, when you start consuming less glucose, less carbohydrates, you will store less of that glycogen. You'll store less glucose in your muscles because you're eating less. Your body's burning off more of it. There's less excess, so there's nothing really to store. Since when the body stores glucose in the muscles, it stores it with sodium and water. When it's not storing as much glucose, you don't have the weight of that water in you anymore. The water that would be paired together with the glucose to be stored in muscles now doesn't, so you expel it. You pee. You urinate it out. So you weigh less when you eat less carbohydrates. This is also why you weigh more when you eat more carbohydrates. If you are typically a controlled dieter, and then all of a sudden one night you go out with friends, you have fun, you eat a lot of carbs, you will wake up heavier the next day than you normally do because you're retaining water from all the extra carbohydrates. It doesn't mean you got fat. You didn't gain body fat. You gained water weight. So that's essentially what happens when people start with like a drastic change or some kind of big change to their food intake. Whether they're lowering their overall food intake, whether it's just counting calories and making sure they're in a small deficit, or they're doing, keto, just cutting out a food group, carbohydrates, and that makes them eat less, hopefully. Or you're doing intermittent fasting or HCG shots, which just make you not as hungry. Whatever it is, if you consume less food, you're going to net consuming less carbohydrates, which is going to cause you to store less water weight. So you weigh less. That's part of why they would have been able to lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks. It wasn't that they lost 10 pounds of body fat. They lost maybe 2 to 3 to 4 pounds of body fat, and the rest of it being water weight. That's why what's happening now is they're seeing it kind of plateau. They're used to this big rate of change. 2 pounds every 2 or 3 days. 2 pounds every 2 or 3 days. And now it's like, I might go a whole week and only lose 1 or 2 pounds. That's actually normal. To go an entire week and lose 1 to 2 pounds is normal. You're not doing anything wrong. Now, what's also kind of fun to know is now that your body water has kind of leveled off, and it is what it is. You lost that initial loss. Now your body's just going to hold kind of a consistent amount, assuming your food stays consistent. That means that the rate of weight change that you will see now is going to be more body fat. So you might only lose 2 pounds a week, but it's going to be more indicative, like more representative of true body fat loss, not just water weight. So if you lost 5 pounds the first week, it might have been 3 pounds of water and 2 pounds of fat. So by the fourth week, if you're only losing 2 pounds, it's the 2 pounds of fat because your water's already gone. So even though it looks like it's less, it's still very significant, right? Now what we do see is more indicative of actual fat loss, not just water weight loss. So that's actually the goal, is to lose on average 1 to 2 pounds per week. Now you can push that however you want. It's your personal choice. Depends on kind of mental toughness around food and or just the ability to control emotions separate from food. Are you good at stress management? If you're good at stress management, then you're probably going to be able to diet to a more intense degree and lose fat at a faster rate. If you are not good at stress management, you will not be able to lose fat fast of a rate because you're likely going to be looking to food as a part of coping, and or you're just so stressed you're not going to be able to make your best choices, and you're going to choose easy, fast options, which typically leads to choosing easy, fast options for food to reduce stress, and then that usually means you're eating not as high of quality. So stress management, learning how to just deal with the crap of life, is extremely helpful for success with fat loss diets. It's actually very helpful as well for people who are trying to eat to gain weight, because you don't want to do that either. So eating to gain weight is like force feeding yourself, and I've done that on many occasions, and that is actually as hard as dieting. So the recommendation I have for the client is to follow the numbers that I gave. So don't go lower than the numbers I gave you. Stick within those numbers. Now, if you're not my client, you can go to our website under free nutrition education. We have a document there. You can click on the first thing you see on that page is to create your own nutrition program. It'll teach you how to set up your calories to know if you're in a deficit. So that's free on our website. What you want to do is you want to be in a small deficit. Now, my clients, these clients that send in this email, you don't have to do anything. Just follow the numbers I gave you, okay? For everybody else, you want to make sure that you're in a deficit. You can create a caloric deficit by either eating less or moving more. And I would always recommend, in most cases, depending on a person's schedule and physical abilities, that they do a little bit of both. If you want to lose fat at a fast rate but not lose your mind, it is good to eat a little less and move a little more, rather than having to have all of the deficit coming from eating less, because that creates a huge drastic change in the volume of foods that you typically eat, and you're going to find yourself being very hungry and having intense cravings. How much of a deficit? The general place to start would be, again, if you go to our website, you use that document under free nutrition education, it'll tell you all this stuff. But you want to start at around 500 calories less than your maintenance level. You'd want to find out what your maintenance calories are. Again, that document will tell you. Go 500 calories less than that. And then you want to add in more movement if you can. Try to increase your step count, 1,000 steps a day. Take a walk at lunch. Take a walk after work. Take a walk before work. If you go to the gym 3 times a week, maybe you can stay an extra 10, 15 minutes to get a little extra in. Maybe you can find a 4th day a week that you can get in there. So you just try to move a little more and eat a little less. And you want to aim for losing about 1 to 2 pounds per week. If you're not losing at least a pound a week, you probably need to push that caloric deficit more. If you're losing greater than 2 pounds a week and you're not having intense cravings, then stick with it for a little bit. See if you can use that. If you can lose it 2 to 3 pounds a week and not lose your mind, go for it. Try it. But if you are starting to suffer, if you are starting to have cravings, if you're starting to have, just kind of where you sit down and you're like, oh my God, I just ate a bunch of food and I wasn't even paying attention to what I was doing. So if you start to have this emotional, mental struggle with food, you want to slow things down a little bit. So eat a little more on your most active days, 1 to 2 days a week. Eat a little more. That'll help reduce some of the deficit, but you'll still be losing around 2 pounds per week. So that's kind of the sweet spot, is if you're not losing 2 pounds a week, eat a little less. If you're losing more than 2 pounds a week, be mindful that it's okay to eat a little more if you need to, in order to control cravings or in order to control just kind of the psychological, mental, emotional aspects of trying to diet. So, the client was absolutely right when they said that weight loss is not linear. It does happen in stages. So you may weigh yourself every day. That's totally fine. I do that a lot. But you're not going to see, this nice incremental 0.1 or 0.2 pound change every single day. You're also not going to see an exact 2 pounds per week kind of change. It's going to be, some weeks it might be 1.6, some weeks it might be 2.4. You're just looking for a trend. So over 4 weeks, you would want to be losing 4 to 8 pounds. So if every 4 weeks you're losing less than 4, you need to push that caloric deficit more. If every 4 weeks you're losing more than 8 pounds, you can afford to pull back on the caloric deficit if you need to, in order to control cravings and the emotional, mental aspects of the dieting process. Now, it might not sound super fun to say that if you aim for 2 pounds a week, that's that great. It might not feel as fun as losing 10 pounds in the first 2 weeks, for sure. But, again, it's more representative of actual fat loss, not just water weight manipulation. And you think about the course of 3 months. 3 months in our lifetime is not really that long. It really isn't. So it's about to be June 1st. Actually, I think you guys are going to be listening to this. Heck, I don't even know. You're going to be listening to this around June 1st. So if we go February, March, April, May. So April. From April to now. So say you dieted through April, January, February, March, maybe March. Yeah, so April, May, and you diet through June. So you diet those 3 months. You would lose, if you kept that rate, that'd be 24 pounds. So in 3 months, you can lose 24 pounds. In 6 months, you can lose 48 pounds. That's enormous. And what's awesome about the rate of 2 pounds per week is it's more sustainable. It's more permanent. So remember, you can lose more faster. Yes. But you're going to have that rebound effect. Once you get back to trying to eat in an actual sustainable life manner, you're going to end up eating a little bit more carbohydrates than if you were doing some kind of crazy intense thing to lose fat even faster. When you go back to normal lifestyle habits, you're going to gain a little bit of water retention back. You're going to gain some body fat back. Remember, the more extreme you do, the more of a rebound that follows that extreme. So if you stay with 2 pounds per week, you're going to have more permanence to the changes, and you're going to do that weight loss in a way that's likely sustainable for the rest of your life. So say you went from eating 2,000 calories a day, let's say 2,200 calories a day on average, and now you're eating only 1,700 calories a day. Well, if you do that slowly over the course of 2-3 months, that becomes fine. That feels great. You're normal. Your body's adjusted to it. No worries. But when you do crazy stuff like cutting out whole food groups or restricting your food to only 4-hour windows or using, supplements or drugs or shots or injections, whatever it might be, if it's not a sustainable thing, you're not going to get sustained results. So I would definitely recommend that you achieve weight loss in a manner that teaches you how to not get fat again. You don't want to just lose the fat to gain it right back. You want to lose it to keep it off. So you have to learn how to do different than what caused you to be fat in the first place. So you have to learn how to eat in a way that is different than what you did before, but is sustainable for the rest of your life. Okay? Cool. So hopefully that's helpful. So for that client, just keep following the calorie goals that I gave you. That sweets only 1 day a week is a freaking awesome goal. Keep that up. You will be losing less. So you will not lose 5 pounds every week. But if you can lose, say, 2 pounds every week, then you're going to be doing great. And that's more indicative of true actual fat loss. And that's a great rate of weight loss. That's excellent. That's exactly where you want to be. Okay? Awesome. If you have any questions, shoot me an email, brutalironjim@gmail.com. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you like the podcast, please share it. The more people we share it with, the more people can help. Thank you to those who donate to support the podcast financially. It does have a high hosting cost on all the different platforms, so I appreciate the financial support so we can keep doing this every single day. You can donate on our website if you'd like to. If you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us and please follow us on Instagram and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Jim. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.